The Galactic Council of Sentient Species had a problem. Well, actually they had several problems, but lately they all seemed to converge around one particular issue: humans. As Councillor Thexlan of the Saranai Imperium stared at the holographic display of yet another failed military engagement against the strange bipedal creatures from the backwater spiral arm, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of frustration and fascination. "Play it again," he commanded, his long, slender fingers tapping rhythmically against the obsidian council table. The recording began once more. A Moroi battlecruiser, one of their most advanced vessels equipped with the latest upgrades in plasma weaponry, approached a human colony world. The ship was massive, nearly 3 kilometers long, its hull bristling with weapon emplacements. The Exlan watched as the Moroi ship opened fire, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts that would have vaporized the surface of most planets. The bolts impacted an invisible barrier surrounding the human world and simply disappeared. Not even a flicker of energy discharge was visible. It was as if the attack had never happened. "Impossible," muttered Councillor Zurich of the Moroi hegemony. "That was enough firepower to crack a small moon. And yet there it is," replied Thexlan, his voice betraying neither surprise nor concern. Among the Saranai, emotional displays were considered vulgar. The human's shield technology continues to defy our understanding. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the recording continued. The Moroi ship, undeterred by its initial failure, unleashed a second, more concentrated barrage. Again, the invisible barrier absorbed the attack without any visible strain. Then, a small human vessel, barely a tenth the size of the Moroi cruiser, emerged from the planet's orbit. What happened next was both fascinating and terrifying. The human ship did not immediately fire. Instead, it transmitted a message, which the Council recording translated into the standard galactic language. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. You have fired upon a protected human colony. Leave immediately, or face the consequences." The Moroi, of course, did not leave. Their empire had conquered 17 species across 3 galactic arms. They were not about to be intimidated by creatures who had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century. The Moroi ship fired again, this time directing its weapons at the human vessel. The plasma bolts impacted another invisible barrier around the tiny ship and dissipated harmlessly. Then the human vessel fired, a single concentrated beam of energy, so bright that the recording had to dim the visual feed, struck the Moroi cruiser. The beam passed through the Moroi's own shields, as if they weren't there, and the massive warship simply vanished. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, and the next, it was gone. "By the void," whispered Councillor Vexara of the Juhai Confederation. "That's not possible." "And yet," the Exlan replied, his tone unchanged, "it happened." The recording ended, and the council chamber remained silent for several moments. "This is the 17th such incident in the past standard year," the Exlan finally said. "The pattern is always the same. Our species attempt to conquer or subjugate the humans, and our forces are either repelled or destroyed. We fire weapons that should obliterate them, and they simply ignore them. The humans must be stopped," declared Zurich, his voice rising. "They are an existential threat to the galactic order." "And how do you propose we do that?" asked Thexlan. "Our most powerful weapons cannot penetrate their shields. Meanwhile, their weapons pass through our defenses as if they don't exist. We must unite against them," Zurich insisted. "A combined fleet from all council species would be destroyed just as easily," the Exlan interrupted. "The humans have a saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, and expecting different results. Perhaps it's time we tried a different approach." The council erupted into heated debate. Some advocated for more aggressive military action, others for diplomatic isolation. A few even suggested attempting to steal human technology, though no spy had ever returned from such a mission. The Exlan remained silent, his mind racing. He had made a career out of understanding his enemies, and the humans were by far the most puzzling adversaries he had ever encountered. Not only did they possess seemingly impenetrable shields and weapons of unimaginable power, but they were also fractured, divided into countless factions that were often at war with each other. That was perhaps the most baffling aspect of all. The humans spent more time fighting among themselves than they did defending against external threats. Each human faction seemed to possess the same level of advanced technology, yet they continued to wage war against each other. It defied all logical explanation. As the council continued its futile debate, the Exlan made a decision. The Saranai Imperium would take a different path. Rather than attempting to conquer the humans, they would seek to understand them. And so, 3 standard months later, the Exlan found himself aboard the Saranai diplomatic vessel Enlightened Perception, approaching the human star system known as Alpha Centauri. The system was home to a major human colony, and was considered neutral ground among the various human factions. "Counselor, we're being hailed by the Human Defense Station," reported the ship's captain, a veteran Saranai officer named Kalaris. "Put it through," the Exlan replied. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human female with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She wore a uniform of dark blue with gold accents, which Thexlan's research indicated was associated with the human faction known as the Terran Confederation. "This is Commander Amara Washington of Alpha Centauri Defense Station," the human said. "Identify yourself and state your business." "I am Counselor Thexlan of the Saranai Imperium," he replied. "I come in peace, seeking dialogue with your leadership." The human's expression remained impassive. "The Saranai Imperium has maintained neutrality in the ongoing conflicts between the Galactic Council and human territories. What has changed?" "Nothing has changed, Commander," the Exlan said. "That is precisely why I am here. The Saranai wish to understand the humans better, to find common ground. We believe there is much our species can learn from each other." Washington's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're the first representative from a major council species to approach us without weapons blazing. Forgive me if I'm skeptical. Skepticism is the beginning of wisdom," the Exlan replied, quoting an ancient Saranai philosopher. "I do not ask for trust, only for an opportunity to speak." For a long moment, the human commander said nothing. Then she nodded. "Very well, Counselor. You and a small delegation may dock at our station, but be warned, any aggressive action will be met with immediate and decisive force." "Understood, Commander. We come only to talk." As the communication ended, Captain Kalaris turned to Thexlan. "Are you certain this is wise, Counselor? The humans have destroyed every council vessel that has entered their territory." "Those vessels came with hostile intent," the Exlan replied. "We do not. Besides, I am curious to see these humans up close, to understand how a species so divided can also be so technologically advanced. And if they decide to destroy us anyway," the Exlan's lips curled into the Saranai equivalent of a smile. "Then our journey will be brief, Captain." Hours later, the Exlan found himself walking through the corridors of the Alpha Centauri Defense Station, accompanied by a small delegation of Saranai officials. The station was a marvel of engineering, a massive structure that housed not only military personnel, but also civilian researchers, merchants, and diplomats from the various human factions. What struck Thexlan most was the diversity among the humans. They came in a variety of skin tones, facial structures, and physical builds. Some were tall and slender, others short and stocky. Some had hair on their heads in various colors and styles, while others were completely bald. Yet despite these differences, they were all unmistakably human. Commander Washington led them to a conference room with a large window overlooking the blue-green planet below. "Alpha Centauri IV," she said, noticing Thexlan's gaze. Home to over 50 million humans from 12 different factions, we call it Harmony. An ironic name, the Exlin observed, given the state of human politics. Washington's lips twitched. We're aware of the irony, Counselor, but the name represents an aspiration, not necessarily a reality. They settled into chairs around a large table. The Exlin noted that the human chairs had been adjusted to accommodate Sci-Fi physiology, with extra support for their lower backs and space for their longer limbs. A small but meaningful gesture of hospitality. So Washington said, "You want to understand humans, where would you like to begin?" The Exlin considered the question carefully. "Perhaps with the most obvious puzzle, your shield technology. It seems impervious to even our most powerful weapons." Washington's expression remained neutral. "I'm not authorized to discuss the specifics of our defensive systems, Counselor, but I can tell you that our shields are the result of centuries of research and development, driven by necessity. Necessity born of your conflicts with each other," the Exlin surmised. "Exactly," Washington replied. "Humans have been fighting each other for as long as we've existed. We've gotten very good at it. Yet you've never united, never experienced what we call a unification event, a moment when a species comes together under a single authority." Washington leaned back in her chair. "Many have tried to unify humanity by force. All have failed. We're stubborn that way." "So I've noticed," the Exlin said. "But this constant conflict, it must be exhausting. Wouldn't peace be preferable?" "Peace without freedom is just subjugation," Washington replied. "And freedom without conflict is an illusion. Besides, our conflicts drive our innovation. The shields you're so curious about, they were developed by the Martian Republic during their war with the Terran Confederation. The energy weapons that can penetrate any known defense, created by the Lunar Directorate to counter those shields." The Exlin absorbed this information. "A perpetual arms race between your own factions, more or less," Washington admitted. "Though it's not always about weapons. Medical technology, environmental systems, propulsion, they all advance because of competition between human factions. And yet," the Exlin noted, "when faced with external threats, you seem to unite." Washington's expression hardened slightly. "We have our differences, but we're still human. When the Moroi attacked New Eden, every faction contributed to its defense. When the Juhai tried to enslave the Proxima Centauri colony, they found themselves facing ships from every human territory." "Fascinating," the Exlin murmured. "Division as a strength rather than a weakness." "I wouldn't go that far," Washington said. "Our divisions have cost us dearly over the centuries, but they've also ensured that no single tyrant can ever rule all of humanity." The conversation continued for hours. The Exlin learned about the various human factions, the Terran Confederation, the oldest and most conservative, the Martian Republic, known for its technological innovation, the Lunar Directorate, masters of espionage and subterfuge, the Jovian Collective, with their focus on sustainable living and environmental harmony, and dozens of others, each with their own cultures, governments, and military forces. He also learned about human history, their long bloody path from primitive tribes to interstellar civilization, their countless wars, their brushes with self-extinction, their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. As the meeting drew to a close, the Exlin felt both enlightened and troubled. The humans were unlike any species he had encountered in his long diplomatic career. They were fractious, contradictory, simultaneously primitive and advanced. They could create works of breathtaking beauty and commit acts of unspeakable cruelty, sometimes within the same hour. "I believe," he said finally, "that the Sci-Fi Imperium and humanity could benefit from a formal alliance." Washington raised an eyebrow. "An alliance? Against whom?" "Not against anyone," the Exlin replied. "Rather an alliance of mutual understanding and cooperation. The Sci-Fi are not interested in conquest or subjugation. We seek knowledge, stability, and prosperity. I believe we could learn much from each other. Washington studied him for a long moment. I'll convey your proposal to my superiors, but I should warn you, Counselor, human alliances are rarely simple or straightforward. I would expect nothing less, the Excellent said with a small bow. Complexity is the nature of the universe. To seek simplicity is to deny reality. As the Excellent prepared to depart, Commander Washington escorted him back to the docking bay. One last question, Counselor, she said. Why now? The Surinai have known about humanity for years. Why seek an alliance at this particular moment? The Excellent considered his answer carefully. The galaxy is changing, Commander. The old order is crumbling. The Moroi hegemony, the Juhai Confederation, they've built their empires on conquest and subjugation. But humanity has shown that such empires are not invincible. The Surinai believe it is better to adapt to change than to resist it. Washington nodded slowly. A pragmatic approach. The Surinai are nothing if not pragmatic. The Excellent replied. We recognize that humanity, for all its divisions and contradictions, represents the future of the galaxy. We would rather stand with you than against you. As the Excellent boarded his ship, he reflected on the strange creatures he had just encountered. Humans were a paradox, violent yet compassionate, divided yet united, primitive yet advanced. They defied easy categorization or understanding. But one thing was clear, the galaxy would never be the same now that humanity had emerged from its cradle. The age of conquest was ending, and a new era was beginning. An era of uncertainty, yes, but also of possibility, and the Surinai Imperium would be ready. Half a galaxy away, Emperor Surinai's HFY of Alom clan sat on his throne, reading the latest reports from his spies within the Galactic Council. The news was not good. The council was in disarray, with factions forming and dissolving as various species jockeyed for position in the new galactic order. At the center of the chaos were the humans, always the humans. Your Majesty, announced a guard, Counselor Thexlan has returned from his mission to human space. Surinais looked up. Send him in. The Excellent entered the throne room bowing deeply before his emperor. Your Majesty, I bring news from the human territories. Speak, commanded Surinais. The humans are receptive to an alliance with the Surinai Imperium, the Excellent reported. They are cautious, as is their nature, but interested in our proposal. Surinais nodded slowly. And what of their shield technology? Did you learn anything about it? Only that it is the result of centuries of internal conflict. The Excellent replied. The humans have been at war with themselves for their entire history. Their technology has evolved to meet the challenges of fighting other humans, which explains why their weapons can penetrate their own shields. Surinais mused. A continual arms race, driving innovation at an unprecedented rate. Exactly, Your Majesty. The humans are divided into countless factions, each with its own agenda and military. But when faced with external threats, they unite. Surinais rose from his throne and walked to a large window overlooking the capital city of the Surinai Imperium. The Moroi believe they can defeat the humans through overwhelming force. The Juhai think they can outsmart them. Neither understands the true nature of the threat.
Your Majesty, the humans are not a threat because of their technology, Counselor Surinais said. They are a threat because of their mindset. They do not think like us. They do not organize like us. They do not fight like us. Indeed, Your Majesty, they are unpredictable, and that unpredictability makes them dangerous, Surinais concluded. But it also makes them valuable allies. If we can understand them, if we can learn from them, perhaps we can navigate the coming storm. The Excellent bowed again. What are your orders, Your Majesty? Surinais turned back to face his counselor. Prepare a formal alliance proposal. Include provisions for cultural exchange, technological cooperation, and mutual defense. But most importantly, include a clause about knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing, Your Majesty. Yes, Saranius said, his eyes gleaming. The humans have much to teach us, Counselor, and I intend to learn everything I can. As Thetslan departed to carry out his emperor's orders, Saranius returned to his contemplation of the city below. The Saranae Imperium had survived for millennia by being adaptable, by recognizing shifts in the galactic balance of power and adjusting accordingly. The emergence of humanity was the greatest shift in thousands of years. A species that had gone from primitive tool use to interstellar travel in less than 50,000 years. A species divided against itself yet united in the face of external threats. A species with technology that defied the understanding of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Yes, the humans were dangerous, but they were also fascinating. And perhaps, just perhaps, they were the key to the Saranae Imperium's survival in the uncertain future that lay ahead. Admiral Navarro Quinn stood on the observation deck of Atlantis Station, watching as the Saranae diplomatic vessel departed. Beside him, Commander Washington waited in silence. "Well?" Quinn asked finally. "They're sincere," Washington replied. "Or at least Counselor Thetslan is. They genuinely want an alliance." Quinn nodded slowly. "And what do you think is driving this sudden desire for friendship?" "Fear," Washington said without hesitation. "The Saranae have seen what happened to the Moro and the Juhai when they tried to conquer our worlds. They're choosing a different path." "Smart of them," Quinn admitted. "But can we trust them?" Washington shrugged. "Can we trust anyone in this galaxy? The Saranae are pragmatic. They'll honor an alliance as long as it serves their interests, and when it no longer does, then we'll deal with that when it comes," Washington said. "In the meantime, having allies among the Council species could be valuable, especially with the Moro building up for another offensive." Quinn sighed. "Another one. Don't they ever learn?" "Apparently not," Washington replied. "Intelligence suggests they're assembling a fleet 3 times the size of their last attempt. They're calling it the final solution to the human problem." Quinn's expression darkened. "Unfortunate choice of words." "Indeed," Washington agreed. "ETA is 3 months. They're planning to hit multiple human worlds simultaneously, hoping to overwhelm our defenses." "Let me guess," Quinn said. "They've developed some new weapon they think can penetrate our shields." Washington nodded. "A planet-killing plasma cannon. They tested it on an uninhabited world in the Orion Arm, reduced it to slag in under an hour, and they think this will work against us because they're desperate," Washington said. "The Moro hegemony is built on conquest. If they can't conquer, they lose legitimacy. They're already facing uprisings on a dozen worlds." Quinn turned away from the viewport. "Alert all factions, full mobilization, and send word to the Saranae. Tell them we accept their alliance proposal, with one condition, which is, they help us end the Moro threat once and for all." Washington raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll agree to that?" Quinn smiled grimly. "If they're as pragmatic as you say, they will. The Moro are a dying empire. Better to be on the winning side of history." As Washington left to carry out his orders, Quinn returned his gaze to the stars. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. For better or worse, the old order was crumbling, and in its place, something new was being born, something unpredictable, chaotic, and potentially glorious. Just like humanity itself, the Moro War Council was in session, and Supreme Commander Zurich was not pleased. The holographic displays showed the latest intelligence on human defensive capabilities, and the news was not good. "Impossible," Zurich muttered, staring at the data. "No shield technology should be able to withstand that level of energy." "The data is accurate, Supreme Commander," replied Science Director Korax. "Our new plasma cannon had no effect on the human test subject." "Test subject?" asked War Minister Thalax. "You mean you actually fired on a human, a captured spy?" Korax explained. "We placed him in a containment field, and directed the plasma cannon at him at 1/10 power. The human's personal shield absorbed the energy without difficulty. Zurich slammed his fist on the table. How can they have shields that powerful on a personal scale? We don't know, Korax admitted. Human technology defies our understanding. They seem to have developed methods of energy manipulation that are centuries beyond our own. Then we must acquire their technology, Thilax declared. Capture their scientists, their engineers, force them to reveal their secrets. We've tried, Zurich reminded him. Every attempt to capture human personnel has failed. Their personal shields are impenetrable, and they carry weapons that can disintegrate our soldiers with a single shot. The War Council fell silent, each member contemplating the dire situation. The Moro hegemony had dominated the galaxy for millennia, conquering world after world, subjugating species after species. They had never encountered a force they couldn't eventually overcome, until humanity. What about the Serani? Asked Fleet Admiral Vorsix. Our spies report, they're seeking an alliance with the humans. Zurich's eyes narrowed. The Serani are weaklings. They survive by adapting rather than conquering. Their alliance with the humans changes nothing. It changes everything, Vorsix insisted. The Serani have the most advanced intelligence network in the galaxy. If they share that with the humans, then we will strike before that happens, Zurich decided. The final solution will proceed as planned. All available forces will be committed. We will hit every major human world simultaneously, overwhelm their defenses with sheer numbers. And if that fails, asked Thilax. Zurich's expression was grim. Then the Moro hegemony will fall, but we will fall fighting as befits warriors of our stature. As the War Council continued to debate strategy, Zurich's mind was already made up. The attack would proceed. The full might of the Moro hegemony would be brought to bear against the human worlds. Victory or extinction. Those were the only options left. What Zurich didn't know was that his plans were already compromised. Among his most trusted advisors was a human infiltrator, wearing a synthetic Moro skin over a suit of advanced nanomaterials. The infiltrator had been in place for months, feeding information back to human intelligence. And even now, as the Moro prepared for their final solution, human fleets were already moving into position. The trap was set, and the Moro were about to walk right into it. On the human colony world of New Terra, Dr. Alara Chen adjusted her quantum scanner and peered at the results. The Serani diplomatic delegation had arrived 2 days ago, and she had been assigned to give them a tour of the research facilities. Fascinating, murmured Councillor Thexlan, watching as she manipulated the holographic display. You can actually visualize the quantum field, not just visualize it, Alara replied. We can manipulate it. Watch. She made a series of gestures over the control panel, and the quantum field shifted, forming a complex geometric pattern. This is the basis of our shield technology. We create a stable quantum field that can absorb and redirect energy. Thexlan's eyes widened. You're sharing this with us. Why? Alara smiled. Because knowledge should be free, and because we believe the Serani are sincere in their desire for alliance. We are, Thexlan assured her. The Emperor himself has authorized me to share our own technological advances with you, such as our faster-than-light communication system, Thexlan replied. It allows for instantaneous communication across any distance. It could be useful in coordinating defenses. Alara nodded slowly. Against the Moro, you mean? Yes, Thexlan admitted. Our intelligence suggests they are planning a major offensive, a last desperate attempt to conquer human worlds. We know, Alara said. We've been preparing for it, you know. Thexlan seemed surprised. How? You're not the only ones with spies, Counselor. We've had agents within the Moro High Command for years. Thexlan absorbed this information. The Moro are formidable enemies, They've conquered 17 species across 3 galactic arms, and they've failed to conquer us 17 times, Alara pointed out. But this time, they're committing everything, all their forces, all their resources. They believe it's victory or extinction. And we believe they're right, Alara said. The galaxy is changing, Counselor. The age of conquest is ending. Species like the Morrow, who built their empires on subjugation and force, are dinosaurs. They just don't know they're extinct yet. The Exlan nodded slowly. And what of the Serani? Are we dinosaurs too? That depends on you, Alara replied. Can you adapt? Can you embrace a future where cooperation is valued over conquest, where knowledge is shared rather than hoarded? I believe we can, the Exlan said. The Emperor believes we can. That's why we're here. Then welcome to the future, Counselor, Alara said, extending her hand in the human gesture of friendship. Together we might just save the galaxy from itself. As the Exlan took her hand, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange creatures that had so thoroughly disrupted the galactic status quo. Humans were contradictions wrapped in enigmas. They fought among themselves with a ferocity that was terrifying, yet they extended the hand of friendship to alien species with genuine warmth. They possessed technology that could destroy worlds, yet they used it primarily for defense. They had the power to conquer the galaxy, yet they seemed content to simply exist within it, exploring, learning, growing. The Serani had made the right choice, the Exlan decided. Better to stand with these fascinating contradictory creatures than against them. Better to learn from them than to fear them. And perhaps, just perhaps, together they could forge a new galactic order, one based not on conquest and subjugation, but on cooperation and mutual respect. It was a radical idea, a dangerous idea, but then the humans specialized in radical, dangerous ideas, and somehow, they made them work. 3 standard months later, the Morrow hegemony launched its final solution. Over 10,000 warships emerged from hyperspace near human worlds, their weapons primed and ready to fire. But the humans were waiting, and they were not alone. Serani vessels, equipped with human shield technology, stood alongside human ships, and behind them, fleets from a dozen other species who had chosen to ally with humanity rather than continue the cycle of conquest and subjugation. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. The Morrow hegemony, once the most feared power in the galaxy, was shattered in a single day. Their ships were destroyed, their leaders captured, their empire broken, and in the aftermath, as the galaxy reeled from the sudden shift in power, humanity extended a hand to the defeated Morrow, not to subjugate them, not to enslave them, but to offer them a place in the new galactic order. Many refused, choosing extinction over adaptation, but some accepted, beginning the long process of reimagining their society without conquest at its core. And so the galaxy changed, not through a single cataclysmic event, but through a series of choices made by countless individuals across countless worlds. Choices to cooperate rather than conquer, to share rather than hoard, to live alongside rather than rule over. It was a messy process, full of setbacks and conflicts. But then, as the humans often said, progress was rarely neat or linear, and at the center of it all were the strange contradictory creatures from Earth, still divided among themselves, still engaged in their internal conflicts, still driving themselves to ever greater heights of innovation and discovery. But now, they were no longer alone. They had allies who valued their friendship, who learned from their example, who stood with them against the forces of conquest and subjugation. Together they were building something new, something that had never existed before in the long history of the galaxy, a future without empires,